Hey everybody, how's it going? So I'm listening to a lot of your mixes on Monday Mix Reviews, and we're getting some really interesting results, and I'm noticing a lot of you guys still need some help when it comes to mixing real drums. Not a big surprise. Mixing real drums can be a little bit difficult, but fortunately, we've got the tools available now to make it a whole lot easier than it used to be. I'm going to show you guys the system I use for getting the snare drum that I want pretty much every single time. All you got to do is use the right tools in the right order, and it's really not that big of a deal. And one of the things I reach for pretty much every single time I'm mixing drums is the AIX drum EQ, because you can use it to tune it to the actual frequencies your drum is using. I'm going to show you how to do this real quick. So what we can do is we can go from a drum mix like this to this. Welcome to the greatest snare mixing trick I ever learned. All right, that snare is pretty freaking slamming, that's for sure. And the cool thing is I'm doing it mostly in the box. I'm using maybe a little bit of outboard compression for some room mics and whatnot, but the fundamentals, the close mics on the snare, that's all just using software and not a whole lot of compression either. I'm going to take you through it real quick. So what I like to do here in Reaper is I like to have a snare top mic and a snare bottom mic, and I'll feed those into a global fader. Snare. Turn off the drum reverb, turn all this crap off. This is what we got to start with. That's my snare sound. That's what I'm starting with. So to mix drums to begin with, what I'm going to do is I'll treat the snare top and the snare bottom separately, and I'll just put a little bit of gate on using the AIX multiband gate. This thing's just phenomenal. It's perfect for getting rid of bleed from all your other sources on your drum set and just lets you localize the snare drum itself, because that's the biggest thing you're going to be fighting when you're mixing real drums is all the bleed from all the other drums, because drummers like to pound the living shit out of the hi-hats and then wonder why they don't have this massive freaking snare sound. It's like, I don't know, did you try hitting the snare harder instead? It's a constant struggle that we have to deal with, but unfortunately, some things never change. Fortunately, this isn't such a big problem because we can gate the drum differently for different frequency bands. The multiband gate breaks it up into bass, mid, and treble, basically. And we can gate things as we want. Take out as much as the bleed we want. We're just going to listen to the top mic here. So that's our top mic. Let's turn off the processing. Let me just back that up a bit, and we're going to go back there. So notice I've still got a bit of bleed in there. I don't want to kill all of it because, you do get some ambiance and stuff like that coming from the different spots on the kit. But we're taking enough of that annoying frequencies out that we don't have to deal with it as much, and it doesn't become such a problem in the mix. So I've just got a super fast attack. There's no hold, 128 millisecond release just on the treble spectrum. But if we go into the mids, we've got a lot more sustain. That's where the clang is on the drum, and then we've got the bottom as well. Slow up the attack there just a little bit so it's not quite so nasty, because we can let those elements of the drum sustain out longer, because that's not the parts that we're fighting in the mix. This part right here, the top end, that's where all the cymbal hash is. That's what you're going to be fighting. So we've only got that open for 126 milliseconds. So this is what we're getting here. That's what we're letting through. Just a little splat, and that's fine, because we don't need all that top end from the top of the snare. We can also use the bottom snare, and that way we hear the snares rattling on the bottom of the drum. In this case, we're letting through a lot more of the top and the mid-range, but we're taking out more of the low band where the kick drum will sit, so that way we're hearing the elements of this drum that we want to hear. Because if you turn this off, you're going to get a lot of kick drum in here too. We don't want a lot of kick drum there because that's what our kick mic's for, and we can treat that individually. So now that we've got the top and bottom snare mics gated separately for what that particular element requires, we can combine those into a single track, which is going to come out on the snare fader. Top mic, bottom mic. Together, that's pretty slamming. If we want brighter, we just bring in the bottom mic. We don't have to add a ton of EQ. This is the real trick here. What we do is when we combine those, we use the AIX drum EQ, and we get something really cool. And that's just Spank City. We turn that off. Very nice. But this just brings out that bottom end. It makes it sound that much better. And here's why this works so well. Is because the AIX EQ is really unique as far as EQs goes, because it's actually set up to be just a drum EQ. It's supposed to, what it does is it allows you to find the fundamental frequency of your drum and tune the equalizer to what that drum is tuned to. You can do this with normal EQs and graphic EQs and all that, paragraphs and whatnot. There's just a lot of math involved. What AIX figured out is if you set a fundamental frequency, you can figure out what the resonant frequencies are, and then you can tune all the octaves of the EQ just by making an adjustment like so. This is really cool. And I'm surprised more of you guys aren't using it when you submit me tracks on mix reviews. It really does make mixing drums that much easier. So we're going to dial in this EQ real fast here on this drum because it's going to give us the fundamental frequency and we can just tweak it out according to that. So we can see right here, we've got a big hump. We're going to move that over right there. So the second octave is right on top of that. We're going to add the gain. There, that's the fundamental note of the snare right there. That's where the thump is. Okay, now you hear a little bit of the honk. That's the resonant frequency. And we've got a resonant note filter here. We can see we've got a secondary hump right here. We can tune this right where that peak is. Go on a high Q, add that. Watch this. You know, that's the resonant frequency of your snare drum. That's the one we don't want. The one that goes, hoo, hoo, hoo. You know, it's just annoying, right? Some drums will clang a lot more than others, but because of this, we can localize it and we can get rid of it. Check this out. Now, if we want more of that clang gone, we can just go up the octaves on that resonance and take it down. We'll go real narrow bands here. Same thing. We're going to crank that up, take it down. And then this octave as well. Crank it up, take it down. Check it out. That clang should be gone. How about that? Take it off. That took all of like 20 seconds to get just a really wicked snare sound just by using applied mathematics instead of hunting for those frequencies going, oh, is this really going to work or not? There we go. Boom. Done. I'm just going to crank these up a little bit more. That sounds really cool. I really like the sound of that. Don't want to take out too much, just enough. And then up here at about 6 kilohertz, we're going to go wide Q. We're going to bring up a little, we're going to just add in a little bit of top end. Maybe a tiny bit at 12. We went from that to that. Let's drop it in the mix. There's only 2 more steps left to get the snare really slamming. And the first one is this. If we mute out this little track I've got over here, this is what I call drum crush. And we're using parallel compression. Notice I don't have any compression going on the snare drum at all at this point. And it's nice and snappy. We unmute this and we get this. And all I'm doing is using what's called the intuition compressor, and I'm sending all of the close mics, the kick, the snare, the toms, into this compressor. And that's just getting hit right here. Turn it off. That's what we're hearing. And this is a really neat interface because we've just got a threshold here. Lets us show how much compression we're doing, how much we're getting, and it shows us graphically what we're doing. But we're using a super fast attack, medium release, and a bit of a soft knee at a fairly aggressive threshold. And what this is doing is kind of simulating what you get with a FET type compressor, and just getting really, really aggressive, kind of taking the peaks out of all the drums and just adding in that nice slamming resonance right there. And the green is showing us how much is being compressed here. So we just want to take some of that initial impact off that drum. You don't want to go too far. But this is great because all those drums are now going to this fader here, and I've got parallel compression. I can just dial in as much as I want. That's a pretty slamming snare, and that's no samples at all. That is just straight up software. And the really cool thing here, and I got to thank my friend AIXDSP for showing me this. This is using the AIX iconic reverb as well, and I'm using a really, really, really short reverb. I mean, just like a couple, 0.100 seconds, like, so what's that, 10 milliseconds, something like that. And I've got it set for a 80% dry, so 20% wet. And I'm just using this to add maybe a bit of 3D effect to the snare. Check this out. I'm going to put this in and out of the mix, play it back. Let's leave it off, and I'll bring it in. Now we've added this 3D effect to the snare. Oh, excuse me. Yes, that's the iconic reverb. Yes, it's the Intuition compressor, the iconic reverb. Excuse me, I do tend to get that confused every once in a while. Hey, it happens, but whatever. I love the effect it's doing here. Just a real short reverb there, and we bring it in. There we go. That's a really nice slamming snare with a little bit of a 3D effect, and it's not swimming in reverb or anything like that. We didn't have to like EQ the living crap out of the drum to get some attack on it either. And this is the thing. This is a mistake a lot of us make, myself included. I know I did this all the time. I used to crank up the 10K on the snare and go, wow, why does it sound so thin? Why does it sound so papery? That kind of thing. And it's like once you start playing with the different mics, the top mic and the bottom mic, you realize where the sounds are coming from that you want. It becomes much easier to deal with and get the kind of drum sound you want. Of course, you want a bigger reverb. Just add it into the mix. All right, there you go. I got to say, I really do love how the snare is turning out. And once again, it didn't take a lot of processing. All it took was the individual gating for the top mics, a global equalizer, and then a global compressor. That is it. Now, if you haven't heard of these plugins before, you're really missing out, especially if you're mixing live drums. Now, we've got a really cool cross promo going on between AIX and Spectre Digital because they're good friends of ours. So what I'd say is head on over to AIX and get the drum producer pack, which is on sale right now, and it will give you the EQ, the compressor, and the gate all for one low price. And what we're going to do is if you buy anything from AIX, we're going to throw in my Savage Grooves Basic Edition, which is 30 songs to mix, including 5 tutorials from me, as well as my producing Prog Metal course for absolutely free. So if you buy anything from AIX, be it an individual plugin or once again the drum producer pack, AIX is going to give you a coupon you can use over at Spectre Digital to get my producing Prog Metal course for free and the Savage Grooves Basic Pack at absolutely no cost. That's kind of an unbeatable deal. So not only will you get the tools, you'll get the tuition to go along with it. So if you're into mixing live drums or you want to spice up your mixes, I definitely recommend checking this out. This is kind of what I'd call an unbeatable deal. You definitely can't lose, that's for sure. I'll have links for everything in the description below. And if you guys want to know how I got the awesome tom sound here, how I get those to work so well like this, I've got another tutorial that I put out a couple years ago called The Greatest Tom Mixing Trick I Ever Learned. You can check it out right here.